guys, it's Sophie. So one of the videos that you guys wanted to see and one that I really like filming is recommendations videos. So I'm going to be sharing some recommendations of like campus books, school books with you today. I've read quite a lot of them and I really enjoyed them, so I thought it would be good to share. The first one that I have isn't set entirely in a campus, but it does go towards a campus, and that is Normal People by Sally Rooney. This follows the story of two young people living in Ireland who come from very different backgrounds, and it shows their relationship over quite a long period of time, from when they're in school together through to when they reconvene at university. And I think I liked the university elements of this more than any other, and it talks a lot about how university is like a time of change and how people can become different people over their life. What I love most about Normal People is how realistic, like photorealistic, the depictions are of these two young people, and I know loads of people have read this one already, but I just really like it and the way it portrays university, so one recommendation. And the next one I have is a book that I absolutely love, I haven't talked about in a long time, and that is Special Topics in Calamity Physics by Marisha Pessl. This is a high school story, that's where this story is set. It's about a young girl whose mother has died mysteriously, and the story is almost like a murder mystery paired with this very intelligent girl growing up in her high school and navigating that as a system. I love the character of her dad, and some of the like quotes in here are just fantastic. There's like a really special element to Marisha Pessl's writing, in that even though she writes quite long, it does kind of fly past, and I've read this one a few times and just really enjoyed it. The kind of almost like super like intellectual feeling of how this girl's life is going, with like the daily chore and boringness of school and then the tragedy woven in. It's just really good. Definitely would recommend this, and actually I kind of want to reread it now I'm talking about it again. And then the next one, I don't feel like I could do like a campus student recommendation without including some Murakami. This is Norwegian Wood. Murakami writes about student life quite a lot in his fiction and his novels, and Norwegian Wood's the first one that comes to mind. The protagonist in this is looking back to a time when he was a student and a kind of love affair that he had when he was a student. But I think if I wanted to pick one, like a book that gave me those kind of like calming studenty vibes and that kind of like quiet sense of spending a lot of time alone with books and then wandering out in like rainy nights to go and get like coffee or snacks, Murakami would be it. And yeah, I really do like his writing. I know that lots of people really enjoyed him and then he found to get a little bit old. I really like it for what it is, and I think I wouldn't read too much Murakami all in one go, but if you haven't read him and you're interested in like studenty stories, definitely do, because it's just got that kind of quiet closeness about it, and I just really like that of it. Next isn't exactly a campus novel, but it has that same sense to it, and that is The Crane's Dance by Meg Howrey. This is a book about an elite ballet institution. It follows two sisters, I don't know if they're twins actually, no, one's older, one's younger, who are both aiming to be in like the higher echelons of ballet. One of them has an injury, and it's about the girls judging themselves off of one another and how they're perceiving themselves in this really competitive arena of achievement, and that sense of like pressure and perfectionism is something that I think links with the kind of study sense of it as well. And yeah, I read this one really recently and was surprised by how fast of a read it was and how much I enjoyed that one. And I don't think you can do a campus book recommendations justice without including The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I'm sure most of you have read this, but if anyone hasn't, this follows a group of mixed-matched friends at university who meet when this new boy who's come in with a very different background sees this kind of like elite selection of students who are studying the classics and wants to join them. It is like a very strange, dark book, and it just plays around a lot with classical themes. I'm sure most of you have read it, but if you haven't, it really is worth reading, and I know it's been overhyped. I reread it last, well actually it wasn't that long ago, it's probably this year, and I did really enjoy reading it, and we discussed it for my book club, and all of us had just said that we just really enjoyed it again on the second go round, or the third go round for us. So yeah, had to keep that one in there. And then on that vein, there's also If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. This is the only book that has sort of had captioned that it is the new secret history, that's actually made me think, ah yes, that is a similar thing, and I enjoy it an awful lot. If We Were Villains follows a group of students at an elite Shakespearean acting school, and similar like twists and flowing to the story as Secret History, if you've read it. If you haven't, I don't want to say too much just because I'm trying not to spoil if I can. But this is amazing. This has Shakespeare woven through it instead of like the classics, and I just absolutely loved it. I enjoyed this when I read it the first time more than I enjoyed reading The Secret History the second time round, so I'd really like to read this one again and see if I enjoy it just as much. Then next we have The Female Persuasion by Meg Wolitzer. This is another one that isn't set entirely on campus, but definitely has campus elements. The main protagonist is in university when the book starts, and she meets an influential feminist kind of speaker, activist, who she sort of falls in love with the idea of, and it's about her growing from being in university to her life outside, and her strange relationship with this woman throughout her life. And I think this is a really good one in that it doesn't just do the campus bit, but it carries on after, and often I want that when I'm reading campus books. So I would definitely recommend The Female Persuasion by Meg Wolitzer, and I need to go and read more of her books. Next I have one that isn't set on campus but includes an affair with a professor, and that is Mislaid by Nell Zink. This is a like very notoriously cheating and philandering professor who gets into a relationship with a young female student who has literary ambitions, but it's all set on like the outside of this lake where they live, sort of like off campus, but there's all of the tension and strange power dynamic included that kind of comes with them off campus. Nell Zink writes in a really strange manner. I find it really interesting, but I know some people don't enjoy her. I would say that this is in the same style as the other things that I've read of hers, and whilst I really like it, it's kind of slightly disjointed or slightly almost dissociative in a way. It feels as though things might not quite link up to the real world, but I really like that. I feel like I can totally get into the little microcosm of life that she's creating. But yeah, if you don't like her, you might not enjoy this, but if you haven't given her a try, definitely do read some Nell Zink, whether it's this one or any of her other books. I really like all of what she's written. Next I have The Idiot by Elif Baughman, which is entirely a campus novel. This is about I think she's Turkish American, who's come to Harvard and is trying to like navigate the new life of the university. There's a lot in here about friendship, I would say, rather than this being like necessarily a romantic novel, but it is like a full-on like deep dive into college life and relationships and the way that we view ourselves, and the way how we view ourselves changes as we go into new scenarios. So definitely like a deep dive campus book here. The next one I have is on the same like cliche as Mislaid, but this one is Pages for You by Sylvia Brownrigg, and this is talking about a young student who arrives at university and falls in love with one of her older female professors. It's really sweet. I still need to read the sequel to Pages for You, Pages for Her, because I did really enjoy it, and I don't mind that cliche. I know that some people just find that really boring and don't want to read about it, but I really liked this one as a story, and I definitely want to read her next one. It's just that kind of same story but with a bit of a twist on it in terms of it's a FF storyline, and I think it's really well written and really sweet. Next is another one that I need to include, and that's Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. I know not everyone that sees this is going to pick this up, but the thing that drew me into Infinite Jest when I was like first thinking about whether or not I should read it, because it's chunky and it's hard, was the setting, and I think people don't know that much about Infinite Jest necessarily. Like before you read it, you just hear that it's hard and like a bit pretentious. This is set in an elite tennis academy for a lot of it. It's also set in a drug rehabilitation centre, but the tennis academy goes through, and this is one of my like favourite all-time portrayals of the weird pursuit for like perfection and the pressures put on students and the way that people rise to the top or sink down, and the strange things like that someone will be top of a class one day and something happens and it seems like some uncontrolled slip and suddenly they aren't as smart as they used to be, or they aren't as talented at tennis as they used to be, and other people come up, and that weird dynamic and pressure and madness and all of those things that so are in my head when I think about my experience of school and university. I just think this is done so perfectly, and that's what drew me to pick up Infinite Jest. So I'm adding this one in knowing that not everyone is going to be interested in reading it, but that was like when I read about that I was like, oh, I might actually really enjoy this. It is, yeah, it's very detailed but just gets so into that sense. That was my favourite bit of Infinite Jest, I think, was that general storyline. And the next one that I have to recommend is a slightly creepy one, so maybe good for Halloween time, and that is The Dreamers by Karen Thompson Walker. And this story is about a university which comes down with a mysterious sleeping sickness. People start falling asleep and don't wake up. This is again one where university is at the beginning and to lesser extent throughout, but I do definitely think of this when I read it as one set in a university. I really enjoyed it. I found it really quick to read through, and I'd listened to a podcast. What was the podcast called? It's This Podcast Will Kill You. I was like racking my brains as to why I couldn't remember it. But I listened to them talk about the illness that inspired this book, and that made it even more fascinating. So if you haven't read it, go listen to that episode and then go read this, and I guarantee you'll really enjoy it. The next book is one I received for review. I think it's not out, so I'm going to talk about it. I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed it. And that is The Topeka School by Ben Lerner. Just like for some surround on this, it has been blurred by Sally Rooney, Claudia Rankin and Rachel Kushner, and they all think it's good. So as that was like enough for me to know this was my jam when I requested it. But if you need that extra push, that's there. This follows a really weird family with a child who is the child of two different people who are psychiatrists and work in this big hospital, and about their life and their interactions at school and outside of that, and toxic masculinity and what it's like to be growing up with all of the different like political pressures that are going. It's like so hard to describe because it kind of puts everything that's going on at the minute into this little capsule. It's a little bit like when Ali Smith's book came out, which talked about Brexit. If you guys remember that kind of buzz of like, oh my god, this is that, this feels like that, but for America at the minute. I think it's Topeka. I think someone said last time I spoke about Topeka, it's Topeka, not Topeka. The bit of this book that I absolutely adored, and the reason it's in this one, because this stands out to me as like a big running theme, is that the boy is training to be like a debater. He's training to win these debates, and the debates are sort of taken apart because they're kind of largely pointless. They aren't about debating at all. It's about all these other skills, like spreading, where you use loads of different ideas, just throw them out there, or the pace, how many words you can speak per minute. And again, that weird pressure and elitism and drive to be the best and have the best or it's worth nothing, that came through really strongly for me in those parts, and those were the bits I was like reading through to get to. And yeah, I just think it's really good. I'm sorry I can't explain it very well. I do think it's really hard to encapsulate what this book is, but I really enjoyed it. And the last book is one of my favourite campus novels, A Doubter's Almanac by Ethan Canin. This is about a young man, sort of it goes from before university, but a large part of it is when he's at university, and he is a maths prodigy, like a literal genius. And it talks about how his life changes because of this gift that he has, and who he becomes, and what impact that has on those around him. And this is like one of the books that when I think about what I remember is lying in bed. I was at my dad's house, I was staying around there, maybe it was like Christmas or something, and I couldn't go to sleep because I had to find out what happened next. And it's another massive one, and sometimes I feel like I fall in love with massive books for the time spent with them. I love this. I love books that like play into stuff like genius and like what is that and what does that mean and what is it like for the person who's living it and what does it do to people, and I just think it's amazing. As I say, a lot of it's set as he's doing his undergraduate and further studies and his studies at the university once he's finished uni, because he kind of goes on to become an academic. So there's this whole academic journey running through this, and it's just amazing. I love this book so much, and yeah, I kind of want to reread this again now. I think a lot of this video has been me realising I'd kind of like to reread like all of these books. Yeah, so those are my recommendations for some campus novels that I think you guys might enjoy. It's been really fun making this. I only keep books on my shelves that I really like, so I kind of know when I go through like, oh, this is exciting, I get to recommend some books I've really enjoyed. Let me know in the comments down below if any of these sound interesting, and if you pick any of them up, let me know what you think, and I'll see you guys again soon in my next video. Bye!